Good evening and welcome to the City of Pasco Council Workshop Meeting. The Council thanks you for being a part of your city government. At workshop meetings, the Council discusses issues, but no formal action is taken. Agenda packets are available on the City of Pasco's website at www.pasco-wa.gov/agenda. This meeting is also being televised live on PSC-TV Channel 191 on Spectrum Cable in Pasco and Richland, and is streamed on the city's Facebook page, website, YouTube channel, and Microsoft Teams webinar. This and previous council meeting video is available on the city's website. Lastly, the public may submit their comments and or questions by contacting the city manager, city clerk, or by using the Ask Pasco app. Ms. Clerk, if you would call us to order, please.
Councilmember.
Roll call, please. I just did call us to order.
Councilmember Campos.
Here.
Cotta.
Here.
Figueroa.
Present.
Hernandez.
Present.
Morales.
Here.
Milne.
Present.
And Grimm.
I am here. Thank you.
7 members present. We have a quorum.
Thank you. Let's rise for the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. All right, moving on to item number 4, verbal reports from council members. Councilmember Cotta.
Spent a couple days in Olympia on Wednesday and Thursday speaking to representatives and senators. It was great to see their support for the city of Pasco, and spending time with Harold and Charles on the trip. So it was a good time, and it's good to build those relationships.
Thank you, Councilmember Figueroa.
So I had the opportunity on Sunday to make it out to New Movement Church and be able to make introductions. I was able to meet one of the elders and one of the church members there. There's an invitation for the Community in Action event out there, so I just want to make sure that we make ourselves available, and so they appreciated that we were out there, or we were able to kind of be out there. And so any other efforts to collaborate and community efforts, I think we're all open to that, and so we appreciate that. So it's just kind of good to make that connection, and hopefully they'll invite us for further events.
Oh, sounds really good. Yes, and of course, several members of staff, I should let them speak for themselves, but yes, also Councilmember Cotta and myself went to Olympia this last week, and there was really just a good delegation from not only the Pasco Chamber, but Leadership Tri-Cities was there, and so really our community and the Tri-Cities in general, but us specifically, were represented really well there. And it's a tough session. There's a lot of laws coming out that could just make it harder for us to govern the city and to keep more money in our taxpayers' pockets. But hopefully through the advocacy of our senators and legislators that it's a capital budget year, and so kind of our real ask was for our police training center, and that has benefited so many agencies in the area because there used to be more of a backlog in getting officers through training, and this has served our region well, and so hopefully they can find funds that will help us remodel and kind of modernize that a little bit more. So anyways, thank you for everybody's involvement in the community. We're going to move on to number 5, items for discussion with opportunity for public comment. The public may comment on each topic scheduled for discussion up to 2 minutes per person, with a total of 8 minutes per item. If opposing sides wish to speak, then both sides receive an equal amount of time to speak, up to 4 minutes on each side. So these will just be for these agenda item issues. And we are going to start with unlicensed vendors. And this is Deputy City Manager Sigdell.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor, and evening council. We have Ben Franklin Health District here to present on an emerging issue in our community with unlicensed food vendors and raise awareness on the issue. Thank you.
Thank you, save me from dying here. Thank you.
Press the blue button.
It's red.
Oh, my heart's pounding a little bit. Well, thank you guys for giving us opportunity. Brace the mic. We got it. On it. Like that? Is that better? Okay. So thank you guys for the opportunity to be here tonight. My name is Janae Parent, and I am the administrator for the Benton Franklin Health District. I'm actually joined by several members of our public health team here tonight. To my right here is Erin Hockaday. She's the director of our surveillance and investigation program, also known as our environmental health division, and that oversees our food safety. Back here I have Aaliyah Jensen, who's our supervisor of the food safety program, as well as interim Maricela, and then Amanda Moe, who's our communications and public affairs director. So before we begin, I'd like to share that this meeting is especially meaningful to me. I was born and raised here in Pasco, and this is my first time speaking before the city council in my hometown. To be in this space and advocating for public health and the well-being of our community that has helped shape me is something that I don't take lightly. Tonight we'll be presenting information on unpermitted food vendors, what we're seeing locally, how this issue is evolving, and why it matters from a public health, safety, and community perspective. Our goal is not enforcement for enforcement's sake, but to share data, highlight risks, and begin a thoughtful conversation about how we can work together to protect our community members, support legitimate businesses, and ensure safe access to food for everyone. We look forward to your questions and discussion, and we appreciate your partnership in addressing this growing and very complex issue. Thank you.
All right. Good evening, everyone. As Janae said, I'm Erin Hockaday. I'm the director for our environmental health programs at the Health District. I too am a lifelong citizen of the city of Pasco. And excitedly, when I was getting ready for my day today, I told my 9-year-old son I'm going to speak at the city council meeting. And he said, "Mom, what are you going to talk about?" And I said, "Tacos." And he laughed. And I said, "Tacos." And I share that not to make light of it, but because I suspect that there may be others who may react the same way. And that it may seem laughable. I think given in light of what's going on in our world, our country, even some bigger issues that are ongoing in our region, that we are here to talk about food vendors. And I know we will continue to hear, as we have from the public a little bit on this issue, people who say, "Why are you trying to shut these vendors down? They're just trying to make a living. They're small businesses." And that's really why we're here today, is in part to shed a little bit of light on that. Our aim really today is to both update the council on the public health issue that's been gaining momentum locally and statewide, and to fill you in on our next steps as an agency and as a bi-county area, but also to pull the curtain back a little bit for the public on what is really happening behind the scenes with this issue, because I promise you, it is not about tacos. It is not just about tacos. So what we've been seeing, for those of you who haven't seen anything about this issue or been brought up to speed on the issue, the Health District has seen an increase in their number of complaints, and our number of complaints related to unlicensed food vendors in the last 18 months of about 120%. So we've seen this huge skyrocket in number of complaints, primarily due to a specific ring of vendors, a specific connected ring of vendors that are utilizing critical local public health resources. So while unlicensed vendors have always been part of the fabric of our program and what we do here at the Health District, it's something that we address. About 12 months ago, we started to see a really sharp increase, and about the same time, we're hearing from other local health jurisdictions across the state that they're seeing a similar pattern, similar vendors. And later, we started connecting that they are selling identical menus. They have identical setups, vehicles, pop-up tents, business names, business models, and soon connected that this is a connected operation across the state. Since then, we've coordinated with public health officials, law enforcement in our community and across the state, as well as community advocacy groups to learn more about what was going on or what is going on. And now we know that this unlicensed food operation is organized, it's mobile, it's moving between cities, counties, and states. So it is not just Washington, they are California, Oregon, Nevada, and Washington prevalent as well. And they're moving when enforcement increases. The governor's office gave us an update recently in a meeting that they believe that as of recent, there are approximately 68 locations of this vendor across the state. So again, most of them are connected, they believe, are connected to one particular syndicate that's coming out of California. Importantly, these operations are cash only. They're tax-free, so they are not paying taxes. They are not paying business licenses, labor taxes. They're not paying for health permits. They're not paying for equipment to keep their food under sanitary conditions. And the governor's office let us know that they estimated that the operations can generate anywhere between $2,000 to $3,000 a day, sometimes more in larger metro areas. So by no means are these small businesses. These are not mom and pop operations. These are not local. They are actually quite the opposite. They are taking, they are competition for your local businesses, which I'll highlight as well. One issue why, we are involved because obviously there's a food safety risk here. What we are seeing is that, and not just us, but health districts across Washington, is finding food that's being prepared in homes, vehicles, empty lots, being stored in unsafe locations, no temperature controls. They're almost universally lack hand washing, produce washing facilities. Here locally, we found them with health code violations like raw meats leaking onto lettuce, storage of days-old bags of meat and beans at room temperature, transporting meats and beans and perishables across the state in the back of a van with no refrigeration in the summer. I can say that exclusively, we have never once encountered one of these operations where they would have passed a health inspection. So it's a pretty prevalent safety risk from our perspective. Aside from food safety risks, we have concerns about other threats that the vendors bring to the community. So as I highlighted earlier, legitimate licensed restaurants are upset, and they are sharing those concerns with us as they're losing revenue across the state. This hasn't that we've heard of happened here, but we've heard of some of our partners across the state where local businesses have been harassed, intimidated, and even assaults that have happened, many of which go unreported. Public perception often is mislabeling these operations as mom and pop, which makes enforcement politically and emotionally really complex. So I want to, come here today again to share that these owners are not local. These are not local businesses. The structure that they operate places financial and legal risk on the workers in these operations, while the ownership is out of state and profits and remains with others who are harder to identify or hold accountable. So that's an issue. Those are kind of the bigger issues behind what's going on here. I want to share a little bit about what BFHD has been doing and then talk a few points about some of our next steps as well. So up until now, in about the last 4 months, we've really ramped up our efforts to work with other partners here locally to address this as not just a public health issue, but also the law enforcement issue that, that is inevitably woven into this. We have worked with some law enforcement officials across the bi-county area to get together a multi-jurisdictional group of law enforcement and prosecuting attorneys to stand up a Tri-Cities task force to address this group. We've met once last month, and we have plans to meet again here in a few weeks. And our intention really is to get together this kind of multi-jurisdictional group to ensure that both our local codes and our enforcement methods are unified, and that we have a unified approach to this so that we are not just flushing the issue from one jurisdiction to another, but addressing it as a bi-county area. Public Health has also been participating in a statewide task force. So the governor's office, the Department of Health, and some other statewide agencies have brought together a statewide task force to start looking at what we could potentially do at a higher level to address the issue as well. So next steps, we have heard from Seattle King County that they got intel from California that this operation plans to send about 15 more carts up to Washington this spring. So we're working again with our local partners to kind of put together a collective approach before they come back, because they have died back a little bit in the winter. The Tri-Cities task force that I put together, we're evaluating some local codes, our local municipal codes around business licensing in the area of food vending, and just to look at that unified approach, hopefully before they come back in force in the springtime. And then lastly, just some main messages for the public and for the council around these pop-up style vendors. So what we're seeing is these pop-up style vendors, they are selling in parking lots. They are not at local events. So we do not want people to confuse these with our legitimate operations that are popping up at farmers markets, the flea market. Those are permitted. This is not this issue. These vendors are not mobile food trucks. Again, those are permitted. Those are legitimate. In the state of Washington, if you are licensed to sell food by your local health district, you must post your permit in a place that is visible to the public. So you should see a permit posted if it's a legitimate operation. But I do want to make sure the public doesn't get those two conflated and that we're not unintentionally harming our legitimate businesses. Again, this isn't mom and pop. This is organized. It's cash only. There are legal operations that are undercutting our local businesses and taking that business away. They're making thousands of dollars a day tax-free with no accountability. And in public health's eyes, we have our local kids, our families, and our public that are put at risk from the public health and safety risk here. That is all I have. I know we had some materials included in the packet as well, and we have some extra printouts with a little bit of data and an overview of the issue, if anybody wants to take a look at that.
Well, I really appreciate the presentation. I know for one, I've got some questions, but Councilmember Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. I appreciate your guys' presentation, and this is the second time this one was a lot different, a lot more different. Obviously, you guys have been working on it since the last time I sat in it at that event you guys had at Pasco High School. I didn't have too many questions. You guys, it seems like local law enforcement and we had talked about it, creating a system of, because this was going to come back again, and so I'm looking forward to kind of seeing the work that and education that you guys can provide these vendors. I guess one question I had: have you guys had any correspondence with the Washington State Restaurant Fair Play Coalition? Because they reached out to the city, sent us a letter.
Yes. Yeah, we have actually. We had an initial meeting with them with KPD. KPD pulled the meeting together kind of at their request, and the Fair Play Coalition was at that meeting as well as a representative from the governor's office. They brought some local business owners, actually some Pasco business owners, and some business owners from the Burien area, and it was a very good meeting. So we've worked kind of in connection with them. We've been providing them with resources. Fair Play Coalition was working on making some roll call sheets for law enforcement officers that would have pictures of what your local permits look like, and we're working in hand with them as well. Yeah.
I appreciate it, and I'll just make a comment. I'm speaking for myself, but I mean this is a serious issue. This got brought to our attention, as you guys are aware, with the food side vendors selling fruit. Then we started seeing all these unlicensed taco trucks, and I love tacos. Believe me, look at me. I love tacos. I like Mexican food, but there's a process, and our city has made it easier for these mobile food vendors to get permits, and it seems like just lost in translation. But no, I appreciate the work, and I know a lot of us that were getting a lot of flack by, why are you shutting these people down? They got to earn a living. We love that. We come open your businesses here, but there is a process we have to follow. We want to look out people's interests in regards to. I mean, I know people who got sick, and that's what really flipped on me was people getting sick from vendors here in Pasco, and so we just have to look out for the well-being. And I appreciate your work and transparency, and like I said, I'm looking forward to seeing how we address this here this next spring. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Councilmember Campos.
Yeah, I'll just echo what Councilmember Perales said. We love our tacos, but we want to make sure that we get this right. You gave a figure, 120% of complaints. Is there a specific figure? I mean, is that like 50 jumps to 60, or is there way more than that? Do you know how much that is? And the other, is there any, like, how many known cases in the area where people did get sick based off of this?
Yeah, as far as the exact complaint figures, I don't have that number off the top of my head. We get somewhere between 150 and 200 complaints a year. And so that 120% jump has been over the last about 18 months. But significant. Each of these complaints, when we have to respond to one of these vendors, they only operate sometimes Thursdays, but mostly Friday, Saturday, from 8 p.m. to 2 a.m. So we're out in the evenings. We call non-emergency, so we have law enforcement meet us, so we wait. All in all, it takes about 2.5 to 3 hours of staff time per complaint. So it's a significant driver of cost for us in staff time. And I'm sorry, what was your other question? The complaint number?
If you know any like known.
Oh, the illnesses.
Yeah, cases.
Here we've had some anecdotal complaints of illness, but we haven't had a confirmed outbreak here in the city of Boise. This same vendor actually did have, I believe it was an E. coli outbreak where they had 8 people got sick from there. So there have been some other jurisdictions with some actual lab confirmed outbreaks and a lot of anecdotal complaints here. But as we usually tell people in public health, we don't want to wait. You know, we're preventative, right? We want to prevent the problem before that happens. We are always interested in bringing people into compliance rather than pushing them out. We also want to encourage our mobile food truck vendors. We want to encourage people to do things like go to the flea market and get your permit. There are avenues for doing a pop-up tent and table and selling tacos that we do encourage. We have staff who are bilingual. We have staff that are dedicated to educating people and working them smoothly through that permit process. We have also another community group we've worked a little bit with is the Latino Community Fund, and they've done a little bit of outreach to these vendors to try to kind of talk to them and help bring them into compliance. And we've even heard reports back from them that they're not interested. These ones in particular have no interest in getting permitted, so.
Erin, can I add to
Yeah.
that real quick? So just to follow up, it's not a required for them to report to us. It's not mandated, and so it's a little harder to track. So different ways that we're tracking that is either somebody is calling in or we hear from somebody in the community, hey, I know someone, then we ask them to report it to us, or we're monitoring our social media pretty regularly on this topic. So the invite is out there to you guys that if you hear somebody or you are personally affected, please let us know. Please call us so that we can get that information.
I think Mayor Pro Tem Milne was next, and then we'll go to the end.
Yeah, thank you for the presentation. Quick question here. We also know, my wife, myself, we noticed these last spring, summer, and they're always in the same like business, like the side of the business. Are the businesses like that are there, say it's like a tire shop, whatever, are they getting a cut? Are they trying to rent out to these people, or are they just plugging into somebody's electricity and they don't know it? I mean,
Probably the latter. Not that we're aware that they have any specific agreements. In many cases, at least I know in Kennewick and in Pasco, where we'll have PD try to contact the business, because one angle that we have worked on with them is getting a trespass order to get them off the property. The businesses often aren't aware because they're operating after hours. They just go and set up. And so usually they will go to one location and then we do make contact, or law enforcement makes contact with the business. The business then says, no, you can't be here. And they just go to the next one and the next one and the next one. So it is a little bit of a game of whack-a-mole as well, because often they just set up. They don't ask for permission.
Erin,
Okay.
can I add to that? So on that note, though, one of our strategies is to work with the chambers so that we can get the businesses engaged to understand if you have somebody that ends up on your property, what things can you be asking to make sure that they're operating correctly and appropriately, but then also make them aware in terms of their property and having some extra eyes there as well.
okay. All right, well, thanks for the clarification. I kind of wondered that because it seemed like you would see them week after week at the same spot, but yeah, maybe they don't know.
Yeah,
'Cause
we
they're-
have had a few cases where we've made contact and the business just said, I had no idea. I just thought they were licensed. They look legit, because they do. They've got uniforms, they've got banners, they look very legitimate. And as soon as we say, hey, they're not, then most often those businesses say, oh, so sorry, like, we won't let them come back. But they're either not aware that they're even setting up, or they present themselves as legitimate and licensed and good to go.
Oh, okay, thank you.
Thank you, Councilmember Figueroa.
Yeah, I just want to say again, thank you for the presentation and kind of echoing the sentiments. I mean, I represent a district that has a lot of these pop-ups over the summer, and sometimes I've stopped over at some of them because, I mean, they look really good, right? And then you kind of look at how they're serving them, like, oh, I don't know if that's really healthy or anything like that. And the whole only cash does kind of set up a dilemma with that when it goes on tags. And as you said, if you've already kind of been tracking that they've are moving through states, and that means that money isn't staying here, that's going elsewhere, and we definitely don't want that. But to kind of go with that, I think kind of the way that I see it is that it isn't about shutting businesses down or these pop-up vendors down. I know the mom and pop narrative is very prevalent and is that I've seen all throughout the valley as well with a lot of these issues. But is the district kind of looking into maybe perhaps like a program that is able to kind of separate the two, maybe those that are in compliance kind of giving like a seal of approval or compliance that, hey, they've done the work and they're good to go. Because I know a lot of times they have to have the license, right, but not every business or pop-up has them. And so maybe in their banner or somewhere, could they have that where clients can go and see that and say, hey, this has a certain seal that it's approved and they're good to go, versus somebody, and then kind of helps with tracking down on those or cracking down on the small pop-up vendors that don't have that will make it easier to kind of maybe have some repercussions.
Yeah, like I said earlier, it's a requirement in the state of Washington that food businesses post their permits. It's also a requirement that they post they have to post a statement that shows how you can link to their latest health inspection. So here in our county, we have QR codes that we give them all. So small QR codes that we give them to post on the outside of their cart, their truck, whatever it may be. We have been doing a couple of pushes to email out to all of our licensed vendors to say, please post your permits, because we really want to make sure, again, that our food trucks don't get confused with our food trucks and vice versa. But I do like that idea of maybe a more positive seal of approval, something that they might want to post. We struggle getting them to post their permits to start with, but yeah, I think that's a good idea though.
Can I add to
Yeah.
that? Okay. So one of the areas that we're running into trouble with is that this particular group of vendors, we can educate. They just don't want to get permitted. And that speaks to a bigger issue that's going on in the back end, right? That I think I want to emphasize here tonight with you all is that while we may be an enforcement agency at Benton Franklin Health District, for us in our culture and how we work with our community, it's educate into compliance, not enforcement and not into fining. And so for those that are willing to work with us, and I would say 99.9% that end up serving food that genuinely just didn't know, they come into compliance through education and awareness. But in this particular case, this is a beast all of its own. But I love your strategy. We'll work on that, and then we'll see if we can make some headway there. Yeah.
Thank you. Councilmember Cotta.
Thank you. Great presentation. Have you noticed any models from any other cities that are doing a really good job handling this problem? Is there enforcement, things that they're doing that you recommend that we do here?
That's interesting because not yet, no. We're all figuring this out together. And in fact, the gentleman who has been working with us as the representative from the governor's office has told us he would like us to be the model. So we're, I think, I'm not going to say further ahead, but we're a little bit further ahead than some other jurisdictions where we are we're seeing very good partnership with our law enforcement partners, with our community group partners. And so I think that we are trying to formulate that model that we can bring up to that state task force that others can potentially model after. So I think right now what for us that looks like is making sure that public health and law enforcement are connected and communicating, that we're kind of presenting this unified front in terms of enforcement, so that if somebody gets shut down in Pasco, because this has happened to us before, shut down in Pasco, we go across the bridge and they're in Kennewick, same night, and back and forth. And so it's of our interest to put together this approach that is kind of unified, so we're not just flushing them around. Looking at our codes, Amanda, our communications director, is going to be working with the PIOs in the region also to look at what does that look like on a communication side, because a lot of this is public sentiment. There's an enforcement piece to this, but there also is a public sentiment piece where many of us have said it tonight, it's tacos. Who can disagree with tacos, right? And there's this thread throughout this conversation of these are just small businesses, these are, but again, we're hearing from our local small businesses. We've had here locally some of our taco restaurants where these vendors are setting up in their parking lots, selling food for half the price because they're not paying taxes, they're not paying for their licenses, they're not paying for refrigerators, for anything like that. And they're selling the same plate of food for half the price as our real local small businesses. So that's kind of where we're interested in pulling this model together. That again, I think the state, we're all looking at each other to develop the model right now. So we're kind of in the thick of it.
Thank you. Yeah, this really undermines the restaurant community, and we want to support them for sure.
Yeah, for sure.
Thank you. And really, again, I appreciate the presentation. And when we think of public safety, obviously this isn't maybe the first thing that always comes to everybody's mind, but I think this is important. And I think Councilmember Cotta especially kind of got to it there at the end. I think we owe it as a council to protect our business community. These are people who are investing into our community. They're paying taxes in our community. They're, typically taking, care of their employees. And, we have no way of, tracking if these people are even, being paid appropriately or correctly, or, there's just so many issues with it. And I hear you, I've seen some of the pushback online that, hey, these people are just trying to earn a living instead of, just asking for money on the street corner. And I appreciate that. But there's a right way of going about it too. And our recent upgrade of the mobile food vending permit process that in so many ways was spearheaded by Councilmember Perales, sitting here to my left, has made it easy. I'm the last person that wants more government bureaucracy or let's just, make people jump through hoops to jump through hoops. But really, there's a reason for a lot of these rules and everything. And so, I appreciate the process. And something else that hasn't even been brought up, but I get concerned about human trafficking even on some of these issues. I don't know where, people are coming from. Are they being taken care of? Like I said, are they being paid appropriately? So there's all kinds of issues with it. And so I appreciate you being out at the forefront and perhaps being a model for our state. I have one question for you. I appreciate the education first kind of enforcement, so to speak, trying to educate people into compliance. I think that's a really good way of going about it. But what types of enforcement are you doing? Is this mostly complaint driven? Or are you guys just kind of going out on a Friday night, or what does that look like?
Well, right now it's complaint driven, really out of necessity. We have 9 food inspectors. We have 9 food inspectors and a supervisor. Again, each one of these takes 2.5, 3 hours, and there have been weeks this summer where we have received 8 of these complaints in a single day, or a couple of days. So we actually don't have the labor force to just drive around and look for them. So we are complaint based only. If we get a complaint, we will respond. If we get a complaint, we may respond kind of in a group, right? Try to do them all on one evening. We'll go out. What that looks like, we'll go out. We will call non-emergency. We have had a few situations here where we've been, we haven't had aggression, but we've had some mild threats kind of against our inspectors. So we kind of have a rule that we don't go out to these unless we have law enforcement partners with us. They're generally really flexible to meeting us within about a half an hour. We go through our typical inspection. We always inspect the booth just to give it kind of a once over in terms of what we're seeing for public health or safety risks there. And then we would direct the discard of the food, of any food that has been handled improperly, and just ask them to shut down. Generally, we'll get decent compliance when we have law enforcement with us, especially. And they usually pack up and they leave. Unfortunately, they could be a couple hours, it could be the next day, and they'll be back up. So it's a little bit of a cyclical effort at this point, which is why we are working with the local group to try to put together something a little bit more strong. But that's really the limits of our authority within public health, is really just to direct closure, direct discard. And that's kind of where it stops. Typically, what we would do is our authority is also driven through due process. So in most environmental health programs that we operate, if you get caught over and over doing something, discharging sewage onto the ground or selling food without a permit, you would escalate up until prosecution. But in this case, we cannot get an identity on an owner, and we're not going to punish the employees because again, they're the front, and those aren't the people who need to be penalized for this. So this is where the state partners come in to track down that kind of head of the operation that we can't get at because we're civilians. We can't do that level of investigation without our law enforcement partners.
Can I add to that?
Yes, please. Yep.
Yeah. So Mayor, just to add to that, there was a comment that you made in your question there, or statement about other activities that may be going on in this. And that's something that, while we don't have direct reports of that, we are in the circles of law enforcement that is aware of things that are going on we can't speak to that because that's not our expertise. But that is something that I would encourage you to do, just to be in the circles with your law enforcement, because this spans Washington, Oregon, and California. This is much bigger than our area, and while it presents as a public health issue, it presents as a small business issue. There are reasons why it's not going with the mainstream in terms of coming into compliance and doing what they need to do to support the city and support the other businesses and support our community, because there's other things going on. So I just want to make sure it's clear for you guys that there's not a lot we can comment on, but just make sure you know there's other things going on.
Okay. Thank you. If that's it, we'll turn it over to the public. Thank you, Ms.
Great.
Parent, Ms.
Thank you.
Hockaday. Really appreciate it. We have a public comment time. If anybody from the public would like to speak on this issue. Mr. Cortinas, thank you for coming up.
I'm not here as media tonight, but community and the Latin Business Association. We took the option of supporting the Department of Health on this issue this summer. We visited quite a few of these taco vendors. They're taco vendors, okay? They're not, what they sell, Mexican tacos. I'm like most of us. We love tacos and we eat tacos, and I bought tacos at these places. I didn't know they weren't licensed until it was brought to our attention. Not one was licensed. When we visited these locations, we had just taken our executive board to dinner, and we were coming back and we noticed there was a taco vendor on Road 68. Pasco Police Department was already there. 2 inspectors were already there. The inspectors had just shut him down and told them they needed to throw all their food away. Now, if you see these big trompas, we call them, of meat, there's about $1,500 worth of meat there. And the inspectors wanted them to throw it away because it's been out in the public. They wanted to throw all their vegetables and wanted them to throw everything away. And police officer showed up and very generous, very kind. He said, put everything away, stick it in your van. You guys need to leave. They did. The inspectors stood there and did their job. So Derek and the other inspector was there. I know them both. I've worked with both of them, with our business owners that are members of the Latin Business Association. These taco vendors do not want to get licensed. We offered them. We said, hey, look, why don't we just take you to the health department, Benton Franklin County Health Department. We'll help you guys fill out your applications. We'll help you guys do everything you need to do to get permitted and get licensed. And they didn't want to. And from there, they moved to Kennewick. Then we went to Sunnyside. There was like 6 and 3 in Sunnyside and 3 in Yakima. So none of these vendors want to get licensed. But let me just say this. The Latino or the Hispanic restaurant owners here in town, we have a saying that says, El sol se levanta para todos. The sun rises for everyone. There's enough people here to feed. All the restaurants make money. All the taco vendors make money. If they don't make $1,000 a day, it's the lowest amount that they sell, at about $1,000 a day. That's $30,000 a month. So I think that these
Please wrap up,
vendors,
Mr.
I think that
Cortez.
we're working with these vendors and helping these vendors understand the importance of getting licensed so nobody gets sick and all that. I think that's where we need to stay focused on educating these vendors, come into town, get licensed, and get educated so that nobody gets sick.
Thank you, Mr. Cortinas.
You bet.
Appreciate it. Anybody else for public comment on this issue?
My name's Amber Wade, and I believe that many of you are forgetting that you need to build a trust with your community. My neighbors don't even call the police when there are serious issues. I've called the health department when we've had brown water. Why on earth would we call about food? We don't call about the police. My neighbors call me instead of the police. So you're forgetting that we have bigger fish to fry. So yes, food is very important. But when I moved here, I chose this area because the police reporting was low. I have called the police over 40 different times. People have walked into my gate and stolen my welding gloves. Crime is happening. I've called the managers and owners. They have thrown in my face that I've called the police so many times. When we have a police car thrown in our vehicle, or a car is dropped off in our mobile home park, and the police come, they call and knock on my door because I have plenty of security cameras. You need to build a trust with your community. So if we're not calling the police, why on earth would we ever call about snitching on our neighbors trying to make some money? If they are from California, then you need to find that the root of the problem. These people are getting paid where they're earning money somehow. They're working and making money, but you need to find the root of the problem and build a community, because we're not going to call the police over food when we don't call the police when somebody is exposing themselves to children. And that has happened at my neighbors. So please think about that.
Okay, thank you, Ms. White. Anybody else for public comment on this issue? Second call. Now 3 times. Okay, thank you. We will move on. Thank you for everybody contributing. We're going to go to letter B, Land Use Framework Overview. This is Miss Haley Matson approaching the podium.
Thank you. I was feeling a little cooped up over there. Tonight we have a workshop for the City Council. So we'll shift our mindset from tacos to land use now, and thought this would be a good time to introduce the intricacies of land use. So I'll do a quick 10-minute or less presentation. Feel free to stop me in the middle and I can answer questions. So this relates to land use in Pasco, and it can be a bit of a dense topic, so I'm trying to keep it as simple as possible for the group. And the 3 main topics I'd like to talk to tonight is the comprehensive plan, which we are in the midst of updating right now for Pasco. That's our dream and our vision for the city for the next 20 years, and that outlines the long-term vision. And then we also have the master plans and zoning for Pasco. The master plans that I'm referring to are the downtown master plan. We just updated that a few years ago. I believe I sent an email out to the council a few weeks ago about the plan and the implementation going on. And the other one is, of course, is our Broadmoor master plan area, where we've envisioned a really exciting mix of commercial and residential uses in the Broadmoor area. So our comprehensive plan sets the stage for the next 20 years, and then the zoning and the master plans bring it to life, and that results in the municipal code. And that is what the Community Development Department and Public Works Department and many city departments use on a day-to-day basis, and that is the prescription for the zones and how we regulate different aspects of land use. The red does not mean anything here. I just forgot to turn it black. But why land use matters? As I mentioned, it plans the city, and when we look at the city planning, it's a holistic living being in my mind. So the hearts and veins of the city are the roads and the infrastructure, and then the people and the housing and the jobs and the manufacturing is what really gives the city life. So it can be looked at as a living organism. That's how I look at it. And when you're planning land use, that's the city planning. So you look at where the infrastructure and the jobs and all of that goes and how it works together. You can't haphazardly plan a city well and just say, over here we're going to allow this, and maybe we'll put a slaughterhouse in this neighborhood and a jail here. You need to think about where these land uses go in the city so that it's thought out and that you're not impacting neighborhoods as much as possible, and making sure that everything syncs together. And so that's why we plan for land use. It can be complex, but we can really think about it. It's like SimCity, that game you used to play when you were younger. It just takes a lot longer in real life to build a city. It doesn't happen in a few minutes. It happens in decades or 100 years. But thinking ahead in your roles and the staff's roles, we look at things in ahead of time so that things don't surprise us later. So that's what city planning is and why I believe land use matters. comprehensive plan, I touched on this, and so I'll just skip to the map. And I did want to highlight, it's nice that that's actually in red right there because it's an important part. It is required by state law, and I know we've had conversations lately about some potential frustrations with state law and what if Pasco wants to be different? What if we don't want to grow? What if we want to protect certain areas of town and let our residents just be left alone without new growth? We, really can't do that based on state law. And I haven't seen a city push back. The last city I worked at, the council had similar feelings. And they asked us to do a deep dive into how to push back on the state. And we went in, the full circle and kind of came back to the point that, maybe it's not in the best interest from a risk standpoint because it could cost the city a substantial amount of money. And I have yet to see a state or a city in the state really push back on these growth management guidelines. Maybe Pasco wishes to do so, but I would assume legal and the city manager's office would maybe have some input there, and I certainly would, just because if we don't comply, then we are not eligible for grant funding, which we rely on lots of different grants. I don't know the exact amount, but I do know we rely on state assistance and grants for infrastructure projects, so it's required. So if you're asked by your members of the public, why are you doing this and bringing in more growth, it is a state requirement, and it is what it is at this point. Happy to go into that further if you have questions. And to illustrate the comprehensive plan, this is our land use map. And so the land use map shows the comprehensive plan. And each of these colors here on the map, this is showing Pasco city limits. This is color coded, and then you match the colors over here. So there's a legend. So this is our land uses in the city. And if you'll see, most of it is yellow. Yellow typically designates residential uses, and then the red is commercial. So in Pasco, we have commercial uses that tend to follow the major arterials or the interstate and the exits. That's a good place for commercial. You don't want to, tuck it in the middle of a neighborhood outside of neighborhood grocery stores, which I believe will be allowed soon at the state level and required in cities, but those are like pop-up corner stores. But in general, you'd like to see commercial following the roadways. You have lots of residential in Pasco, and then the pink color, I guess it's magenta, that represents a mixed use designation, so a mix of residential and commercial. And then the gray color designates industrial, and you can see the airport there in the middle with the X shape. Those are the runways. So that's the color-coded land use map, and this is the overarching umbrella of land uses in the city. So does anyone have questions on the land use map before I get into zoning or anything that I've mentioned so far?
During the comprehensive plan update, can the city council suggest certain areas to be changed?
Yes,
in land
absolutely.
use designation?
Yes, the council can suggest that. I will be bringing forward a land capacity analysis in March. And what that means is just, here's the current state of the city. Here's where we may be short in some units. Maybe we find we're very short in commercial based on other cities overside. So I'll bring that to the council along with some proposed changes that applicants are making. And if we agree with them, we can fold them in. If we don't agree, we can say wait for next year. So you'll have the opportunity to suggest changes at that point.
What about zoning?
The zoning map will be changed. Usually I would say no, but for Pasco, we're a little unique in where we have several conflicts with the zoning map and the land use map. So I'd like to reconcile those during this update. So short answer is yes, you can suggest zoning changes at that time too.
And so if we change like a zoning in a certain area, let's say a business owner wouldn't have to change their zoning, or would they have to go through
We could change it for them. So I would recommend, if you are hearing from business owners or property owners, have them contact me. We are being overly flexible with this update, and we're getting it a little bit just because we have so many changes that are being requested, but we do have a safeguard if the city disagrees. Like if I had a property owner come to me and say, I'd like to rezone, half of Pasco to whatever, something that we don't like, I would just say, I'm sorry, we're not taking that in this year. But if there is a property owner, we've had a lot come to us and say, the zoning doesn't match the comp plan designation, or there's a weird curved line, we don't know why, we're going to fix that for them during the update. So they can contact me and I'll add it to the list and we'll vet it through the department and then the city manager's office and then the consultant and then bring it to council.
Okay. Yeah, I'll just give you my example. It's like essentially there's a C3, 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 and he's a C2, and so he feels a little inhibited with
Yep.
stuff.
Yep.
So it's
That-
kind of
that's-
like bringing it all together. Everything around is C3. So
Yes.
okay.
I would have that individual reach out to me and I'll add it to the list. We have a new senior planner on staff, which I'm very happy about. Dan, he's doing great so far and he's keeping track of all that for me right now in a more organized way than I was doing before. So if you want to reach out, we'll keep that.
Is it normal to have high density, medium density zoning so far away from the highways? In the sense that I would think if they were closer to the highways, it would be a little bit more feasible regarding traffic.
It's not uncommon. I mean, if you think about where Pasco is going to grow in the next 200 years, it's likely up to the north. So if you do have some high density up there and then pockets of commercial and good ways to get there, maybe more roads need to be added in the future, or maybe there will be a bridge from Richland to Pasco eventually. I know that's super expensive, but just thinking way ahead, it's really not that out there. And we do look at traffic. So it's called the comprehensive plan because it looks at everything. The traffic. So we do have a transportation master program, a transportation plan that we're looking at. I'm goofing on the name, but we are looking at traffic citywide that coincides with zoning, and we do that with utilities as well. Just so we're not planning high density in some area where maybe utilities will never serve it, or we don't have enough water, or we can't get the traffic there. We look at all of those. That's what's required by the state.
Thank you.
Of course. So this is the comprehensive plan map for the city. And then if you go to, looks like we covered most of this in that slide. So the next layer down from the comprehensive plan is the zoning layer. And so it's the same thing. It's a color-coded map. And we will try and reconcile some of the greens because there's a lot of green and they all look the same, at least to me. So we will change the colors on the map, this update, and make it easier to distinguish between the color. But the zoning falls under the comprehensive plan designation. So I'm going to skip ahead. So this little square over here on the right shows that if you have a comprehensive plan designation of low density residential, there's several zoning districts that can fall within that comp plan designation. So there's different zones. So there's more zones than comp plan layers, and each comprehensive plan designation could have 2 to 3 zones under it. So when we bring you rezones each time, like last week, our job is to review the comprehensive plan designation, and if the zone in Pasco, what the past practice has been is if the zone falls under the comprehensive plan designation, it's usually approved without issue. So these zones break it down into more detail. Like you have different densities and different regulations for each zone. We will be reviewing our zones to see if some of these can be combined or condensed during the comprehensive plan update. There's a few zones that are very similar that may make sense to combine them. So these are what the zones are and how those are created through the comp plan. Any questions on zoning before I move to the next topic down? I'm going down the ladder here. Okay. So this is a diagram that AI helped me create. So comprehensive plan and then zoning, and then from the zoning, those color-coded zones in the municipal code, each zone has its own code. So if you want to know the pink zone, you follow over here to the legend. It says C1 retail business. Well, what does that allow? My property zone C1. So if you want to know, you go to the municipal code and you open it up, and there's a whole code on the C1, and it says here's the purpose of the zone, here's the permitted uses, and here's usually they have some development regulations. So this is what's permitted. This is how tall you can build the building. So in a residential zone, it doesn't make sense to say you can build a 100-foot tower right in the middle of somebody's neighborhood. So you try and keep the heights consistent throughout the zone, and then it covers the size of the lot that you can have, and then the density. I've switched to residential now, and then setbacks and parking. So that goes for all the zones. It's a roadmap of how to implement the code. And the municipal codes are based mostly on best practices for zoning, but they change over time. A lot of codes in Pasco and zones were created back in the 1960s was the first municipal code that came to be. Some of them haven't really been touched much since then, like the RS20 zone, which I'll be bringing back to the group here in a few months. Some of them have been modified over time. We could have a property owner reach out to city staff or council and say, hey, I want to have a drive-through here, but the code doesn't let me, then we look at it, and if we think the change is reasonable, we make the change, but we look at it holistically as a code. So that's how those three sections interact. Any questions about development regulations? Okay. And the regulations also do fall into enforcement. So if there is a use that has just popped up, it's a little different than what was talked about earlier. I'm speaking more permanent use. Let's say that somebody buys a home in a neighborhood and they turn it into a coffee shop. Well, the land use doesn't necessarily allow that. So we would look at the zoning and kind of go backwards from there. That's an extreme example. We could have, rules that you can't have a drive-through facility, and we see that adding, into a certain area, or a certain use that isn't allowed in an area. So we refer to the zoning code, and the zoning code dictates subdivision rules. So when you see housing developments around town, the code says how big those lots can be, how much room around the houses that need to be in the height. So that's what the zoning code does. And that's what our department in CED uses every day. And this is what we use to process building permits. And then there's another layer. I've been speaking mostly about the land use and zoning. And then there's building codes on how the structure is built. So the building codes make sure that the structure is safe, and that lives are preserved if commercial structures are built, and that buildings aren't just going to fall down in a strong windstorm or fires jumping from home to home. There's setback regulations. So with the land use regulations and the building codes and enforcement, that's what our department does on a day-to-day basis. And I did want to cover updates and amendments in the code. I touched on it a little bit earlier, but when we do want to change the code, I wanted to outline the process just so council understands, because I think it can be frustrating if you hear from residents or business owners, why is barbed wire banned downtown? Can we just change the code? Well, we can, but it doesn't happen overnight. So when you change a code, when you do really anything in the land use process, it's meant to take time so that you can look at it closely and involve the public. So there is a public process required. In Pasco, when you change a code, the process that should be followed, in my opinion, is going to the Planning Commission first to vet the code change. So staff usually starts with a workshop with the Planning Commission, and we say, hey, barbed wire is required here, and here's the issue, and this is why the request came up, here's our advice. And then we'll either workshop it once or twice and then get direction from the Planning Commission. Then we'll bring it back for a public hearing for the code change itself. So we need to pull up the code, do the red line edits to it, notice the SEPA document, which is the next topic, and then hold a public hearing. And Planning Commission makes a recommendation to council. And then we bring the topic to council for a workshop and a public hearing. So it's a process over 3 months. And if it's the tiniest little code change, that usually takes the same amount of time as a big code change, just because of all the process you go through. So this is not to deter any suggestions from council or really the public to request code changes. It's just to explain that if you do want a code change and it's very simple, it still takes a very long time to go through the process. And there's not really a way to shorten it. There is an option in Pasco to be transparent that code changes can bypass the Planning Commission, and past council did utilize that quite frequently. I believe it's best practice to send those code changes through Planning Commission, just because they are honed in on land use expertise, and they can dig in the weeds for you and do a lot of the legwork and ask the nitpicky questions, hold the public hearing. So by the time it gets to council, it's just a really easier decision for the council to make, assuming that you agree with the general direction of Planning Commission. But it is good practice to send it through. So that was a little deviation on the topic, but I wanted to touch on that since some of you are new and wanted to talk about the code change process. So I'll end on this slide and describe this during the presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you may have.
Like you're landing there, okay. I appreciate that. I just want you to know, as a refresher for some of us and, for some of the new council members, it was an excellent presentation. Great overview. Does anybody have any questions?
Okay. And if you forget any of this, we'll help you along the way when we bring topics forward to you. I know it's a lot, so thank you for that.
Okay, appreciate it. We are going to bring you back up, I think, really quick, but yeah, that's where I was going to start with the audience. If does anybody in the audience have any questions about the process or anything Ms. Matson presented? Going once? Going twice? Closing public comment for that. All right, if you would just come right back up. I think you are next, right?
Yes, thank you,
Yes,
Mayor.
you are. Letter C. Thank you.
Thank you, and this is an exciting topic to bring forward to the group. We've been working on this for quite some time at the staff level, and this relates to the SEPA flexible categorical exemption thresholds. And for those of you that aren't aware, the SEPA is an acronym used for the State Environmental Policy Act. This is specific to Washington State, and it was an act that was enacted in the 1970s, and it previously was the way to review projects. So the codes I just covered in the last presentation, we use the municipal codes to review projects, and back in the 1970s, the SEPA checklist was really the way to holistically review projects. This was before other codes grew up around it. So it was enacted by the state, and when you review a SEPA checklist, you basically have a project and you fill it out and you submit it to the jurisdiction, and it covers like all aspects: the traffic review, environmental, air quality, housing, cultural resources. So it was a comprehensive review of the project. Since that came out in the 1970s, cities have grown around these regulations and have adopted codes that essentially, in my opinion, cover most of what the SEPA checklist does. So there is a lot of redundancy in this process. And in Pasco, oops, that's not where I want to click. In Pasco, we have these thresholds established. And by thresholds, I mean how big or small is your, or how big is your project? And does it require a SEPA checklist? So if in Pasco, if you have 4 lots or more, you need to fill out this checklist, which is a very small threshold. Like 4 units is a very small project looking at it. And we've had these in place for the last several decades. And the state recently, I would say in the last, well, it wasn't so recently. The state does allow us to update thresholds, and Pasco just hasn't done it yet. So what we're proposing now is to raise the bar so that not all projects need to go through SEPA. And most projects are going through the SEPA review. And that's a checklist that costs money. There's a 2-week comment period. We get agency comments from folks and then public comments. And then we issue a determination. So applicants do not like using this process because it does slow it down. And it can create some uncertainty. So with the checklist and the thresholds update, we are proposing that we can raise the levels, and I have a slide here showing what is the current requirement on the left-hand side and then what the future requirement will be. So as you can see, there's a big jump to the increase. So instead of a 4-unit development triggering the need for SEPA review, now it's a 30-unit development. And these are more aligned with what the city of Kennewick has in place right now. And I believe Richland, if they're not at these levels, will be working on it. We've been talking amongst the planning directors, and we'd like to sort of get together and have similar policies for this. And so we have new levels here on the screen. And I do want to mention that the environmental review is not being degraded. And we've done some public outreach related to this, that the environment will not be ignored. It will still be reviewed through its city codes. And like I mentioned before, the city and state codes sort of do the same thing, in my opinion. So this won't be affecting the review or the quality review of the project. It will just reduce paperwork for applicants. What we are losing is input from public agencies. So when you raise the threshold, the public agency like Washington State Department of Transportation, our neighboring tribes, and our Department of Archaeological and Historic Preservation, those agencies are typically sending us stock comments for everything. Sometimes we get some unique comments from WashDOT and maybe Fish and Wildlife. So they will lose their ability to comment and appeal on SEPAs. However, the idea is that we'll work with them to keep them included in the process and be sure that our city codes meet the state mandates for this. So these are the new levels. We did do outreach and public comment related to this, and that's included in the packet. We had a few agencies comment on the process. And then at the last council meeting, I believe we workshopped this late last year. It was requested by at least one council member that we look at raising the levels all the way up, which would allow us to effectively remove SEPA for all residential projects within the city of Pasco. And we would love to do that at a staff level. We believe that we need to go through the comprehensive plan update first, and then we can move to the max level. So we're proposing to do this either at the end of this year or by Q1 next year. And in order to raise the maximum levels, you do have to prove that you have an updated environmental impact statement and comprehensive plan for the city. So we are on board with that idea. We appreciate the suggestion. We just don't believe we can do it by technicality right now. And by preference, we'd like to focus on the comprehensive plan update, get that right, and then we can raise the maximum levels. So in short, we'll be saving applicants time. We will not reduce the environmental review and eliminate a step in the process for the developers. Happy to answer any questions.
Mr. Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. So is there something that we can put in place now where in the first quarter of next year that we review, perhaps go into those maximums?
Yes, you mean?
Well,
Just
I
turn
mean,
the microphone
I looked through it and I did some research and, it probably is prudent to not go to the maximums at this time, but I would still like for us to review that and see if it's something we can do. You know me, I want things to be done fast, but the comprehensive plan needs to get done, so I'm okay with that. I just would like to hopefully get this back on our table, in the first quarter of 2027 or something,
Yes.
somewhat.
We have it on the schedule. Did you mean something formal in code, or because we do have framework hired to help with the code updates that are required for the comprehensive plan? This is in the work plan to look at raising the exemption levels. It's on the CED work plan that's been shared with
Right.
council. So, and it's been shared with the development community that we're going that way. We just need to do the other steps. It's required that before you go to those max levels, you have to base it on a compliant comprehensive plan. And our 2018 comprehensive plan is compliant technically, but only through the end of the year. So it'd be a lot cleaner to wait. So it is in our plans to do it and take it to council and start looking at it. I would say by Q1 of next year, we should have it adopted if there's not any issues with agencies. So that's the only monkey wrenches in this. Not even a monkey wrench, it just adds another layer. So we are required at the state level before going to the maximum levels to coordinate with outside agencies that currently have a say on the process. So we need to connect with all the different tribes and look at it. I think that'll be a little bit easier now knowing that well, I don't need to get into too much detail, but we need to cover, these different meetings with different groups that have say in this. So that's what we need some time to do. And it's helpful to have it done after the comprehensive plan so we can show them our latest and greatest. But yeah, and if Q1 next year, I believe we'll have it to council. So I can put it on the schedule and make sure that we bring at least an update early next year so you know where we're at with it.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I sent out a document to the council through the city manager, and we always compare ourselves to Bellevue, and Bellevue, they're at the max and stuff, and so I figured we're gonna look at the comparisons to pay people from Bellevue. Hey, the development stuff is kind of comparable, so that was kind of where I was coming from. But yeah, I just wanted to make a note. Yeah, that's great. I totally forgot it was on the CD plan, so it's already kind of codified in a way that we're going to re-review it. So
Yes, and
okay.
staff is motivated on this topic as well. We would like to do that too. It's going to save everyone time, staff and applicants.
I love it. Thank you. Councilmember Campos.
No, I appreciate that. Thank you so much. I'm pretty excited for it. But just a quick question. Is there a map that shows clearly the sensitive areas or where the areas of the exemptions do apply and then do not apply?
Yes, so the SEPA regulations are not exempt on critical area site that I mentioned. So bodies of water, that's the river, and then the shoreline area. If it's within a certain amount of distance from the shoreline, it would still need to go through SEPA review. And it doesn't mean the project isn't going forward. It just goes through this layer of public notice that we've been doing for years in Pasco anyway. So the map is twofold. If there's the state code reads lands covered by water, so it's more focused on wetlands and wet areas, which we don't have a lot of besides the river. So I haven't seen that it specifically calls out shrub steppe or wildlife habitat, but the good thing is that's already covered in the city code. So just because they are exempt from SEPA, the applicants, it doesn't mean that they can mow over sensitive shrub steppe habitat or, burrowing owl habitat. That is still covered by code, by the city's code. So it's generally the shoreline areas. And then I would say the other mapped area that isn't exempt for this, as cited in there, is the cultural resources provisions. It's not listed on this slide. But there's a map that the state has put out that shows sensitive areas in town where cultural resources may be discovered. It usually follows the banks of the river in some of those historic areas. So those areas would not be exempt. If it's marked as high probability to find cultural resources, that we need to go through the SEPA process. If it's marked as low probability to find cultural resources, I have built in code that you still need an inadvertent discovery plan. So everybody who gets issued a permit in Pasco will have language that says, if you find something during construction, you have to stop digging and call, the police or the cultural resources, depending on what you find in the ground. But likely cultural resources, if you find an artifact, you're supposed to stop and have a plan in place for that.
Councilmember Figueroa.
So I just want to first say thank you to Councilman Perales for that graph. That was really helpful to kind of be able to compare and contrast some of those things. But going to this, then I know that in our packet we have the outreach was done to the local tribes, and no objections were made to the current flexible threshold increases. And as you shared, Pasco did propose an increase, but not the max under WAC. So do we foresee that perhaps the tribes will be objecting if we do the max increases, or is that kind of already a conversation that they had and they agreed to the ones that we've done so far and they're okay with if we go all the way to the max?
I think we definitely want to have a conversation with the tribes. And we did notice all of the tribes. I only heard back from Colville, Confederated Tribe. I hope I'm saying that right. And they did have a question as to what we were doing. I don't know if they fully understood the change. And so I replied to them and explained that projects like 4 to 30 units will no longer go through SEPA review, and they will lose their ability to comment on it or appeal the SEPA process. But what I found is the tribe, and they deferred to the state to reply, and the state never replied. But we, give 60 days notice. When we do get comments from the tribes, it typically is stock comments. And so they say, this area is marked as high probability, which is already on a map that we have access to, and they suggest that a cultural resources study be required. So that's why I built in that stipulation, that it's mirroring what the tribal comments are. So I may not hit every single site. Like there could be a site that somebody builds on and finds something, and it will be an issue, but the inadvertent discovery plan will protect us. The language in there says if you fall within these hotspot areas, you are required to go through SEPA review, which will let the tribes comment. So it's taking them out of the areas that aren't high probability review. So they're not going to get hundreds of SEPAs from Pasco. They're only going to get specific SEPAs that fall within that area. But to answer your question, when we do the full levels, I think some sit-down meetings would be a good idea, or multiple outreaches. And if I'm not hearing responses, try and at least get a hold of somebody so that we all feel good about it, that we're not just trying to sneak something past an email, which I don't believe we did this time around, but some more direct outreach I think would be appropriate when we do that.
Yeah, and I appreciate that stipulation that inadvertent discovery plan was added in there. I think that's a really good component to kind of be culturally relevant and understand that they should definitely have a big say in what we do here as Indigenous folks to these lands that we are in. So I appreciate that to staff for including that in there.
Awesome, thank you. No, I appreciate you digging into this, Ms. Manson. This is probably the biggest complaint we get from the development community. I'm sure I'm not telling you anything you don't know, as far as just having decades-old SEPA thresholds that are really just kind of out of whack anymore. And, I love that it's going to save staff a lot of time for just reviews that really just aren't necessary or perhaps even appropriate anymore. Maybe for those that still have some concerns, just if you just maybe comment one more time, how were these new levels established?
keep turning it off. I'm sorry.
Nope, you're good.
These levels were established, these flexible levels that we're going to were established at the state level, I believe, back in 2014. So that's what I'm basing it on, is the state levels. And it was just a step. Now the state is allowing you to go all the way, but about, I guess, 11 years ago now or 12 years ago, the state said, cities, you may go up quite a bit higher from the existing statewide levels if you meet these different marks. So that's where we came up with them levels, and we did decide to align more or less with the city of Kennewick. I think we're different in some areas, but we wanted to try and stay consistent with Kennewick. But that's how we came up with the levels. The state allows you to go up a certain amount. I don't know if we went up to the max in every case, just because of certain things like commercial. We don't have industrial standards in place, so there's some things in code we want to get done with the comprehensive plan update or start thinking about before we go all the way in all aspects. That's where we came up with the levels.
Awesome, appreciate it. Okay,
of
if
course.
no further comments, I guess you're off the hook. We'll turn it over to the public. If the public would like to speak on this, would anybody from the public like to speak on SEPA? Going once? Going twice? We will close that and move on. We are one of the few cities I know of that are blessed with 2 Miss Matsons. And so I would like to hear, I'm not going to say the other one because yes. But yes, if you'd be so kind as to kick this off, letter D.
You can say my name with a Z.
Exactly.
Yes.
There's a subtle difference there, yeah.
Okay, so tonight's workshop is just informational. Formal action will be scheduled at a future meeting. Good evening, Mayor and Council. We are here to discuss the 2026 collective bargaining agreement with the Pasco Police Officers Association non-uniformed unit. This unit includes key public safety support roles such as a crime analyst, a evidence technician, and police support specialists who directly support our uniformed personnel. The current agreement expired at the end of this last year, December. Negotiations did begin September 24th, 2025, and the city and the union reached a tentative agreement on November 21st of 2025. The membership ratified the agreement on December 1st, and this was a 1-year agreement covering the calendar year for 2026. The intent to have just a 1-year deal was for us to get our arms wrapped around the budget, and so that we could actually go into a contract negotiation with a longer term contract. The physical impact for this 1-year deal is approximately $30,000 based on current staffing levels. That would include any of the wage adjustments and all the costs of payroll taxes and everything that we have to pay. The agreement also increases the annual shoe allowance for the employees by about $50 per person. Beyond wages, the agreement makes a few important clarifications. So first, it just establishes an agreed upon options for comp time accrual, carryover, and some cash out provisions. This provides flexibility for employees while giving the city clear administrative controls and reducing the risk of disputes. Second, the agreement aligns our health, dental, and vision language and contributions within the contract to be aligned with the non-represented employee benefit group and formally incorporates insurance reopener language. This improves consistency, transparency, and the city's ability to respond to future legislative or market changes. Any questions? Anything you want to add?
No.
Okay.
Great negotiations, and appreciate HR's support in this.
Thank you. Anybody from council? Councilmember Perales.
I'll just say that during my time with the Pasco Police Department Citizens Academy, we learned a lot about what these non-uniform individuals do, and they do support the uniform staff in great ways. And so going through that provided me that kind of insights, and totally support this increase. And it's essentially absorbed within the PD budget right now. And so I look forward to the flexibility going into this next year when we talk about city budget. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. We'll give the public a moment to comment, and I guess, Chief, you're off the hook, but we're gonna bring Ms. Matson back up in a minute.
Good evening. So I'm the Evans technician for the Pasco Police Department, Ashley Lucas.
Name and city, please. Yep, you're good.
Yep. I just want to say this is my first time working with Sarah, and it was good. It was good to work with just a fresh face, and I've been working for the city for 12 years now. I've known the chief for 18 years now. I came over to Pasco from another local agency, and it's been good. So it's been nice. Yes, it's a 1-year contract, but it's going to be healthy in the long haul to have something like that. And I know Council Perales, he was in my Citizens Academy, and I encourage all of you guys to attend it. It's pretty fun.
I appreciate your dedication to a dozen years here at Pasco. And yeah, I think that says something about the culture and everything going on there. So I really appreciate that. Thank you.
And council, I just apologize for not seeing her in the very front rows. I'm sitting in the back. We were just commenting about calling her out, acknowledging her, and I thought she couldn't make it this evening. So she's a great president, a great leader of that group. So thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Now, would anybody more so from the public like to comment on this issue? Going once, going twice, going 3 times, not seeing anybody. Thank you, everybody. We're going to move on to letter E. This is Resolution 2026, the collective bargaining agreement with the International Union of Operating Engineers, and Ms. Mattson.
So just to repeat myself, tonight is just informational only. There's no action that I'm asking from council, and this will be scheduled at a future meeting. Unfortunately, the IUOE business manager, his name is Josh Carter, was unable to attend tonight's meeting. He rudely planned a nice vacation, so he's somewhere tropical, I believe, right now. I'm here to present the 2026 collective bargaining agreement with the IUOE Local 280. This bargaining unit represents approximately 108 employees who deliver the city's core public works and operational services across public works operations and environmental services, parks and facilities, and animal control and services. These employees maintain streets and infrastructure, operate the city's drinking water and wastewater treatment systems, manage sewer and stormwater systems, maintain pumps and critical equipment, and support the city's vehicle and equipment fleet. They also maintain parks and facilities and provide 7-day animal control and shelter services. This work is essential to public safety, protecting public health, environmental compliance, emergency response readiness, and the city's ability to function during daily operations and emergency events. The current agreement expired at the end of this last year on December 31st. Negotiations began October 21st of 2025. The parties reached a tentative agreement on December 22nd, 2025, and the IUOE membership ratified the agreement on the 30th of December. This again is just a 1-year contract covering the calendar year of 2026. This allows for the city again to have a better grasp of what we're dealing with for our budgetary constraints in the next few years, so we can have a much better deal for hopefully a 3-year contract. Another key information to the background: this year the animal shelter recently was incorporated into this contract. I believe in March of 2025, PERC recognized them as a bargaining unit, and so we also had to negotiate an agreement to incorporate them into this contract. The projected fiscal impact for the 2026 contract year is approximately $329,000 based on current staffing levels. That does include the newly incorporated animal shelter. About 50% of that will be coming out of our general fund. This amount reflects total increased costs associated with wages and deferred compensation, FICA, PERS, all the roll-up costs that go into payroll. Other negotiated economic items resulted in minimal additional costs and are included in this projection. So beyond the wages, this agreement is primarily about clarity and consistency. Several sections were updated to clearly explain how flex time works, when overtime is earned for employees who work alternative work schedules, how compensatory, I can never say that word, is accrued. We updated the leave articles to be compliant with state law. how training reimbursement is applied, and how benefits are administered. These changes give employees and supervisors the same playbook, reduce misunderstandings, and lower the likelihood of disputes or grievances. The agreement also aligns benefit contributions and leave practices with citywide policies used for non-represented employees. A key element of this agreement is the formal, as I mentioned earlier, the formal addition of the animal control and services employees into the IUOE bargaining unit through a letter of agreement. This recognizes their unique 7-day operation while preserving existing schedules and work practices. It includes representation without disrupting service delivery or public safety response. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions for Ms. Mattson with the Z? Seeing none, I guess you're off the hook.
All right, thank you very much.
Thank you so much for the presentation. Would anybody from the audience like to speak on this issue? Wages for operators, going once, going twice. Moving on, letter F, resolution acceptance of work for MLB required improvements at Giza Stadium, female locker room improvements. And we're going to Director Sarah. Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. Tonight we are presenting to you and hoping to have action next week on accepting the work of Bandlin Construction Company. As you know, our baseball fields have had series of improvements required in order for our team to maintain its level and league. And so this is a set of improvements that was required. It was the addition of female lockers. You're seeing the before pictures. Those are basically storage area and some mechanical equipment there. And then with the project, you're seeing some construction work happening. And finally, the after pictures, which is the best part, fully functional female lockers have been created in that same space. This project was part of a series of improvements, as we mentioned, that were funded through a state capital budget allocation. There were other improvements which you have seen already, and others are still coming in the future. For this project specifically, the contract was awarded for $230,000, and I'm going to round these numbers, but ultimately some of the alternative options in that contract were not opted to be included, and so therefore there was a change order that reduced the total cost. So total cost for the project was just over $211,000, and the contractor has met all the requirements of the contract, and we ask that you help us approve their work. Thank you.
Awesome. Anybody from council have any questions for Director Sarah? Okay, I appreciate that. Yeah, women should have their own space like that. Anybody from the audience have a comment on this issue? Going once, going twice, 3 times. Thank you, Director Sarah. We're going to move on to number 6, miscellaneous council discussion. Mr. Stewart.
If I may just provide a couple of updates of some activities taking place this week. Tomorrow is a Coffee with a Cop event at 11:30. Forgive me if I mispronounced their name. Is it the Jardy Atrium in the H building at the Columbia Basin College is where that Coffee with a Cop will take place tomorrow from 11:30 to 1. In addition, this Friday at 1 o'clock, there's a developer and design consultant outreach event here in the council chambers regarding roadway lighting standards updates. Virtual participation is also available if anyone from the public would like to attend virtually.
From noon to 1.
Noon to 1, sorry. Yes. I think I need to go get my classes updated. So this Friday, January 30th, noon to 1 is the developer and design consultant. Again, virtual participation is available. And then finally, we will have a ribbon cutting for the Memorial Pool Dome. That'll be this Wednesday at 1:30. So just a few things going on across the city, and appreciate all the hard work that staff is doing to get these things done. And it's great to see the progress and the engagement. I would stand for any questions or feedback council may have for me at this time.
Anybody have any question or feedback? Oh, Councilmember Perales, yes, sir.
I don't have a question. I actually had something for Ms. Lane.
For something else?
Yeah.
Anybody have anything else for Mr. Stewart before we go on to us? I think you're off the hook. Councilmember Perales.
Thank you, Mayor. Yeah, I almost forgot. It was actually, I think I wrote it down. And I'm glad our city attorney is here because it does involve legal. So there was an article this weekend by the Tri-City Editorial Board discussing the library annexation and that we're not telling the public everything. I didn't appreciate the editorial, and I mean, it is a tax, but I don't think we were hiding that. But I guess what can we not, as council members, show support for it? Can you kind of go over that? Is that something we can't delve into? I know if a municipal body is putting forward a vote for a ballot measure, they can't actively, politic for it. But I mean, in this case, isn't it the library board that's doing it?
Daniel Kenny, City Attorney in person. Good to see you all. Council, there's particular restrictions on supporting or opposing ballot propositions. The only way that you can do that, whether it's yours or anybody else's, is if it is on an agenda, it's published with the ballot title and number so that the public is aware of it, and that you give approximately equal time to both sides for that matter, and then you can pass a resolution in support or opposition to the ballot measure. And that is the only opportunity where you would use city resources for that political measure. And that's the same is true for comments from the public. And so public should not comment on ballot measures to support or oppose, except for in that context. And so if you wanted to do that, you could set that up, have that opportunity to allow the public to speak for or against, and then to also approach it as a resolution for or against as a council.
I appreciate that. Thank you. I may send an email out, but I just kind of wanted to bring that out and talk about it in open session so that we're being transparent. Appreciate it.
Yeah, no, thank you. And, I appreciate bringing that up. I think we decided as a council in an open session like this, that kind of just the idea was we were, going to put it to the public for a vote and just kind of remain neutral on it. Is I think what the Pouts Council kind of decided, and just really let the people, but what's kind of complicated the issue a little bit, and I think they were having the same problem at the school district level, was coming up with people to make for and against statements against it. And so that led to a further amount of, I think the public was kind of wondering whose side what was on. I even fielded an email just wanting to know more about it just because of kind of the nature of it. I don't think there was a lot of information about it other than the previous council passed it on to the Franklin County Commissioners because they then had to approve it to go onto the ballot and just really kind of leave it up to the public at that point. Anybody have anything else for miscellaneous council discussion? I just have one issue to bring up. We need to form as a new council a boards and commissions subcommittee. We have to appoint somebody else for our left committee, as the acronym says. It's email, too many screens open, but we have, what does left stand for, Mayor Pro Tem? Is it law enforcement?
Good question.
Okay. One more time, Chief. Law Enforcement Officers and Firefighters Board. Thank you. It's one thing I found with the city. There's so many acronyms. It's hard to keep them straight in government. So we do need a subcommittee to review appointments. So let's just say like we need on this board, or we kind of changed this around last year to where there's various times to where at least probably 2 people plus myself will sit on a board and just review applicants for this who we're going to appoint to these boards and everything. So I would be open to anybody who wants to volunteer for a boards and commissions subcommittee. Councilmember Perales? Oh, and Cotta. Okay. Those 2? Very good. Okay. Well, 2 plus me keeps us out of a quorum, so that will work. I will pass that on to our city clerk's office to set that up so we can fill those vacancies on those boards. Thank you. So if no one has anything else, we will move on to number 7, executive session. We do have need for an executive session tonight, and this is discussion with legal counsel about current or potential litigation per RCW 42.30.110. This is listed for 35 minutes. Mr. Stewart, do you think that's about right? Okay, we will go 35 minutes, so just want to make sure I know it's there. Sometimes things change though. Thank you. We will be back here at 9:10. So we are adjourned for the time being and drifting into executive session until 9:10.
Next time you're supposed to ride.
Good evening again. We are now out of executive session. No decisions were made, and this meeting is adjourned.